Augustus looks a lot like Caesar 3, but feels like something else. Augustus is a Caesar 3 mod that adds in loads of new features and mechanics present in the later Impressions games, but it doesn't feel like those titles either. Augustus does its own thing. Let's see what that thing is.
Congratulations!
First things first though, installing Augustus is quite simple. You need to already have a copy of Caesar 3 installed, which in case you don't have the game, you can usually get it off GOG for very little. Which, by the way, if you plan to, it would be great if you'd consider using my GOG affiliate link in the pinned comment.
That would be great.
After which you need to visit GitHub, I'll post the exact address in the pinned comment, and download the latest release for your particular OS, including Mac, Linux, and PS Vita, which I found a bit amusing. This will download an archive which you can move into your Caesar 3 folder, and once unzipped, you're pretty much ready to go. This is where I'd also like to shout out Gamer Zach, who has a much larger channel than my own, for hosting the Augustus Discord server. This mod, and really any mod, could not happen without the passion and support of the community. You'll be greeted by a version of Caesar 3 that will run natively on modern resolutions, not to mention one that has a really cool zoom feature implemented so as to better manage the modern resolutions. And that's only one of the several really dope quality of life features that have been implemented in Augustus. For instance, we have game speed controls on the play screen, which is simply great. In ye olde Caesar 3, you'd have to click several times before reaching them, and after a few times of doing that, you'd dig into the game info to find the hotkeys for it. The hotkeys still exist, and they're still usually more handy to use. However, having the controls right there on the screen cannot hurt whatsoever. That's not that extraordinary, though welcomed. What is really great is that you can now bump up the game speed up to 500%, which allows you to fill up your settlements so much faster, and likewise hit your obstacles that much faster as well. One might call it the lean approach to fail often, fail fast. And I'm not done with the awesome new quality of life features, because now you can see all your mission requirements just below the speed settings, and when you have a request from the Emperor, a line will appear at the bottom of the window where it will track the needed resource. So these are the three most front-facing things that you'll engage with and which really change your experience of the game, making Augustus feel like a much better Caesar 3 indeed. But now we're going a layer deeper and look into the myriad of options and settings you can now customize. I'll start with the thing that most irked me about the original Caesar 3. And in case you haven't watched my video on it, here's a tiny clip of what I mean. The gods are tremendous assholes, and if they're not happy, they will be the source of most of your problems. If on the other hand they're appeased, then they'll give you a bit of a bonus now and then, but then you'll most likely only have to deal with the normal responsibilities of city building and management. The bad things they can do far outweigh the good things they can do, so appeasing them is very important. In this respect, the Roman gods are basically the mob. Well, Augustus allows you to deactivate the influence of the mobster gods, which I love. And look, there is a few ways you can look at this. There's the OG purist view of this mechanic was introduced by the designers with some sort of reason, maybe as a resource sink with a reward penalty incentive. That's a fairly valid point. Then there is these sort of metaphysical immersion reasons, seeing as how the deities were a very real and present part of Romans' everyday lives. This was a way of making those things actually have an impact in a game taking place in ancient Roman times, and worked as a stealth catastrophe/bonus mechanic that wouldn't be random. That's maybe a bit of a stretch, but an argument can be made for it. As far as I'm concerned, I found it to be an extremely annoying mechanic that was flow breaking and which hindered me from enjoying what I see as the purpose of the game to be, which is building a functioning settlement within the requirements of any given mission or scenario. Now, you can disagree with me in the comments, you're more than welcome to, but this is one feature I turned off with much pleasure once I saw it was available. Some other super useful features you can now turn on is that you can see the path that a building's walker is going to take in blue, as well as the square where they will spawn in green and the square where they will despawn in red. This will completely take the guesswork out of where your walkers will reach. Likewise, when you place markets now, you'll see their range and it is positively immense. Coupled with this, you can now also stop your walkers from skipping corners. The corner skipping is something that would happen in the base game, and even in Augustus I have had walkers skip corners and even roadblocks. Because yes, Augustus implements possibly the best quality of life feature present in the later Impressions games, roadblocks. Now, for those of you who are new here and maybe don't exactly understand why controlling your walkers is basically the not so hidden fundamental tactical layer of the game, a few years ago I made a clip that explains how the walker system works in the Impressions games, but that clip is in my Nebuchadnezzar video and not a lot of people saw that, so allow me to splice it in here. In the Impressions games, your citizens or walkers would get out of their houses and place of business to either look for services they needed or offer needed services. Whenever they'd find an intersection, they would randomly pick one direction and continue walking. And yeah, that makes about as much sense as you think it does. Because that's exactly what happens when I go out looking for eggs. At each intersection, I roll a d4, and that's how I decide which street I'll go down looking for a shop. This means that unless you lock your walkers into their neighborhoods, they'll just run around the map randomly, never finding the eggs they need, even if you build an egg shop right next to them. Sure, Caesar 3 had gatehouses, but those were ginormous buildings taking up space and money. Roadblocks are nice, discreet, and all Impressions games fans really love them in the games they're present. One other really important feature you can now turn on is having a global labor pool. This was a feature that wouldn't be implemented till Zeus, and again, it made the Impressions games that much better for it. If you're digging this video and want to dive deeper into the world of retro PC gaming, hit that subscribe button to get notified whenever I post a new video. Let's keep the flame of retro PC gaming alive together. Suffice to say, Augustus fixes a ginormous amount of bugs and imbalances, which I can't really go through. However, continuing with the lots of features we can now toggle on and off, you can have your ordinary citizens kill harmless animals on their own. You can, of course, disable wolves and such. You have the option of not only allowing delivery carts to go off-road, but also to carry way more than originally intended, and many more things, as you can see. There's no reason for me to go through all of them. I only touched upon the ones I found to be the most important for me. I'm sure you'll have your own favorites. All of these options, though, are not where the Augustus additions to Caesar 3 end. Thanks to the increased hardware possibilities of modern computers, the scope of Caesar 3 could be expanded. As such, Augustus features not only new buildings that do different things, but also new and more resources like gold, stone, sand and bricks, and more types of food as well. All of these coming with their requisite production buildings. And apropos of production buildings, you can now turn them on or off, allowing you to deal with overproduction or labor availability problems without having to destroy them, to then later in the game need to rebuild them when those problems are addressed. As is the case with most city building games, their core functionality focuses on the efficiency of their production and distribution chains. While production chains can usually be centralized in your industrial regions, where you normally place raw material extraction, production buildings and storage next to each other, distribution is usually where you'll encounter the most challenge. Besides the earlier mentioned buffs you can do to your carts, Augustus also introduces a new cart depot building, which allows you to directly move materials in between granaries and warehouses, thus allowing for an additional logistics layer which can help with distributing goods much better from one side of your settlement to the other. I say a separate logistics layer because Augustus also introduces the idea of building highways, which are super expensive and can only be used by delivery workers. However, they will travel twice as fast on them. So when adding the car depot into this equation, you can build a separate goods delivery network that bypasses your usual residential roads. At great expense, of course, but it is a great option to have. Going deeper into the distribution aspect, you can now directly control which types of workers can access your individual granaries and warehouses, which makes stockpiling things much simpler, whether you do it for a request from the Emperor or for your local industry. And more so, you can also control which types any individual market can or cannot distribute. thus allowing you to have better control over the development of particular residential blocks. Several underlying mechanics of the original have been tweaked and changed. You'll find very detailed info on what and how in the Augustus manual. The one which will have the most impact the quickest is the entertainment mechanic. In Augustus, you need a more diverse array of entertainment options. The mod thus introduces the arena and tavern buildings so as to support this new approach, with the Colosseum and Hippodrome being turned into monument buildings, much like the mechanic from Pharaoh onwards. The original Caesar 3 campaign can be played with any of the improvements and enhancements Augustus offers, and there is also a separate version of the campaign called Reconquered, which you can find directions on where to download and how to install in the Augustus manual. I haven't played this version, so I can't tell you my thoughts on it, but I may consider streaming it. So you can choose to play Augustus with none of the extra features toggled on, in which case you'll be playing a bug-fixed and natively high-resolution version of Caesar 3. And honestly, you should. I mean, if you want the hardcore OG Caesar 3 experience, just play the basic GOG version. Or if you're lucky enough to have a physical copy and a retro enough setup, rock that for the original gameplay experience points. If, like me, you've already been there and done that, Augustus is such a better, smoother, more engaging experience that I personally don't feel the need to ever re-experience the OG version. It's certainly what Caesar 3 would have been if it was made later in the Impressions game's timeline. If you enjoyed this and want to see more like it, click on the video on the left of your screen. If you'd like to support me, thank you. There is a link to Patreon on the right of the screen. I've been Steve Anansens, thanks for watching and good luck.